So way back in 2006, Cam and I were at a conference called Twist Up. Now, these are the OG LA tech people. There was not a lot of tech people here. And Cam was on a panel. And one of the big takeaways was that he killed it. Everyone was like, oh, he just shut it down. It's so great. So
You're so kind.
yeah, no, I was there. I know. So tell us a little bit about being in the LA tech scene early and how you've seen things evolve. I mean, on that panel, you talked a lot about using tech to build your own business. Share with us, kind of take us back in time. You were using tech, the newest tools. What were some of the things that you learned back then that have helped you today?
All right, so a little backstory is I was in the music industry, having success as an artist, doing all the stuff that rappers do, going on tour and, hanging on jets with Diddy and stuff like that. And then I started seeing a lot of businesses that were cannibalizing the music industry. So that made me curious, and I wanted to learn more about why these companies were able to do something that I felt was damaging our industry. So that curiosity made me study a lot of companies, and then I learned about this thing called Silicon Valley and all of these tech companies. Now, at first, for a rapper, that's kind of intimidating. It's a lot of smart tech engineers, and oh man, I don't know nothing about that type of stuff. It just seemed boring. But then when upon further investigation, I started realizing that, wait a second, there's something special happening here. All the tools that we use, from Instagram to Twitter to Snapchat, these tools are built by young people, right, that understand social. And I was like, wait a second, I understand social. So I started going to tech conference after tech conference, and I was just curious. I was listening, I was hearing what everybody was saying and meeting all kind of different people, learning about all the different layers, venture capitalists, founders, engineers, et cetera, et cetera. And then once I got enough information, then I started realizing, wait a second, I think this is right for me. I want to start getting involved with companies. So I felt like I had a lot of insight into the way people use social from using social for so long that I started advising for a company. And this company was a company that eventually got bought by Google. And when this company got bought by Google, I was just a person that was helping them get influencers and celebrities. They might say, hey, we trying to get in touch with Chris Brown. I would be like, all right, I'll help you get in touch with Chris Brown. That was my relationship with them. I didn't have any ownership in this company. So fast forward, I was so valuable helping this company, they decided to give me a little ownership in the company, which they called advisory shares. Now, that ownership that I had in the company, when they got bought by Google, I made money. And then when I made money, I was like, wait a second. That's how it works? You just give me a piece of the company and it gets bought by somebody bigger and now I make money? So I was like, wait a second, why do they tell us rappers to go make it rain at the strip club? Like, why are we doing that? That's a waste of money. Let's do this. So I stopped doing all that crazy stuff they told me to do. And I was like, I'm going to go get involved with companies like this. That's when I was really focused on, okay, I want to get more ownership in companies. But it was tough because I didn't know which ones were going to be successful. So one day a VC put all these companies in front of me, and then I ended up investing in a company called Maker Studios. And that company ended up getting bought by Disney for close to $1 billion. So now I made a bunch of money, right? And I was like, wait a second, while I'm going doing that, I'm going to start doing this. And it just became the thing. I started trying to get more and more of my peers to come over here and get in this world with me. The first person, my co-founder who's back there, he grew up with Big Boy from Outkast. So we was telling Big, like, hey, man, you don't need to buy another Rolls Royce, man. You got 20 of them already. Let's take some of that money and put in some of these startups. And then it became like that, and next thing you know, Trey Songz and E40 and a bunch of other people started doing it, and now we all invest in startups, and then,
Amen. Amen.
Yeah, that led to me starting my own company, and now I'm an investor and a founder of a company,
So before you get all the way to the good part about you starting your own company, let's take it back. A couple of things I want to break down here. So one of the things as a community, we are early adopters in so many different technologies. And so one thing that Cam did is he took his expertise as a user and using these different tools to build his business as an artist and transition that to think about, how do I build a company in the tech space and really focus on that business model. So what have I learned as a consumer that I can apply to the business itself, knowing what people need? And so those insights and those relationships helped him be helpful and help a startup grow that was then able to sell themselves to Google. So that's one thing I want to make sure we tease out.
Yeah.
And then then recognizing, well, I can make money on doing this, and starting to become an advisor to other companies and to invest in other companies. Tell us a little bit about how you got those introductions. How did you get in the room? How do you get into a maker studio before they're going public or getting bought out by Disney? So tell us how you made those things happen.
Oh, that's a great question. I think the answer to that is, I was talking about this backstage a little bit, that when people look at me and they see me as a musician, people often bring up money, how much money you've made in your career or how much money you're chasing, and even my name has money in it, millionaire, I get it, right? But my focus has never been actually about money. It's always been about information and relationships. I've always understood that those two things were going to be the things that were going to make me successful. So I think if everybody can get that in their DNA and understand that information and relationships is very important and will give you money, you understand the value of that, you always treat every situation like an opportunity to gain a connection or gain more insight. And that will give you confidence, right? When I started, I didn't know nothing about tech. Remember, not that long ago, I was wearing gold teeth. I had a do-rag. Like, I'm way more advanced than I was then, And maybe 4 years, 5 years from now, I'll be way more advanced than I am now, but it's because I'm just consuming information like crazy, right? So I think anybody can do it. You just have to want to do it. And then that information will lead you everywhere you need to go. Like, I didn't know what tech conferences to go to. At first, I had some tech conferences I went to. I was like, oh, what am I doing here, right? But then I learned the ecosystem. I realized which ones made more sense and which ones were right for me and which people would connect well with me. And then I started getting there, and I started getting to the right places. I started meeting the right people. And then it just, one thing led to another,
Absolutely. And so one thing that Sky mentioned in the last panel about building relationships with people before you need something from them. So really thinking about, how do you reach out to a VC? You may not be raising funding now. You may be thinking about it, but starting to build those relationships early. So Cam had that kind of relationship. He mentioned Mark Schuster, he's one of the biggest venture capitalists in Los Angeles. Tell us a little bit about how you cultivated that relationship and how it grew over time.
I think I had a level of confidence that most people don't have. And what I mean by that is, I try to make people relearn everything that they think that they know about people like me, right? Traditionally, a rapper is just this thing like, oh, he's just a rapper. It's a bad thing, right? But I started getting frustrated with people throwing that stuff at me, and I would change it and say, you know what? Being a rapper means having your finger on the pulse of the millennial generation, right? To be hot like Jay-Z for such a long period of time, you have to know what the young generation thinks. You have to know what they dancing in the club, what kind of sounds they like, what kind of shoes they wearing, what new car, and you have to be ahead of the curve. And you can use that as an advantage. So when they throw this rapper thing at me, I switch it around and say, nah, that's what it is, right? And then a lot of the people that are out here putting capital in all these companies and investing in all these companies, they don't even use the products. Like, a lot of y'all could probably tell me about Snap more than they could. So once I started to realize that, it just became a confidence that I started having. And I would talk to them like, no, actually, it doesn't work like that. It works like this. And then they would be like, what? And then I would prove them wrong. And the next thing you know, they're listening to me for insight. So it didn't necessarily happen like that with Mark Schuster. Mark Schuster was a person that just recognized that. And he was like, you know what? I like your confidence. I like your understanding of social. Let's just build a relationship. And it started from there. So he offered to invest in me like 5-6 years ago, and I just wouldn't take his money. I was like, nah, I got my own money. Next thing you know, I started giving him my insight on all kind of companies, and I think he understood the diverse opinion coming into the room and how valuable that was, and that's why me and him built a bond like that.
So you started out as an entrepreneur in residence working with him. Yeah. Explain what that is and kind of what you learned during that period.
Entrepreneur in residence there's a venture capital firm, and I will go in there and sit in there every day and basically be involved in all the pitch meetings when founders come in and they want to raise some capital and they're explaining and pitching to a venture capitalist. I'll be sitting in the room just listening. I meet different founders. I give my opinion sometimes, but ultimately you're there for, a lot of times this ends up being 3 months, but sometimes it ends up being a year. And in order to gain enough information and enough understanding to eventually decide what company you want to build. Some people turn and end up being an investor, but a lot of people that go to an entrepreneur in residence program, they end up building some kind of company. So it's valuable because you sit in a room and watch all these different people coming in talking about their companies. Think about it like Shark Tank, right? Being in a room when all these guys are trying to raise capital, then you start to, get an idea of what you want to build. But when I got in there, I already knew what I wanted to build, and being inside the venture capital firm was very valuable for me because I ended up just seeing everything from the perspective of a venture capital, the person that wants to give you money. I learned why they don't give somebody money, the signals and things that they dislike. It was very valuable.
Now, up front, where Cam was EIR, Entrepreneur in Residence, is one of the leading venture capital firms in Los Angeles. They've been named the leading venture capital firm in Los Angeles for several years. They had 40 exits last year, which is just crazy. And one thing that you get from being in close quarters with people like that is you understand the game from inside and out. Now, Cam, for people who don't have the opportunity to be working with Upfront or be close to a venture capital firm, how would you suggest they get this kind of knowledge and learn how different businesses might succeed or not succeed and start to evaluate different business models to help inform what they're doing?
The one thing people often say to me, well, first I would start by saying, you got to make sure that's what you really want. I think a lot of people end up being in a limbo state where they're trying to figure out what it is they want. Think about when you went to college, right? I was in college and I didn't know what I wanted to be. I was just in there going through the motions. I think a lot of people in life are trying to figure that out. They're looking through the ecosystem, trying to figure out what they think is a good fit for them, or maybe they're chasing something that they shouldn't be chasing, like optimizing for the job. They think they're gonna make the most money, stuff like that. So I think first you gotta start by finding out what you really want. And then second, one thing people often come to me and ask is, will you mentor me? People say that all the time. It's the number one thing. They reach out to people, I need a mentor. But to me, I feel like that's something that it's like you're asking somebody to give you all the information that you can actually get, right? And if it sounds a little bit strange to me because when people come up to me, ask me to be a mentor, most of the time, 99% of the time, I don't know this person. And this happens on the first conversation. And that's the equivalent of you just coming up to me saying, hey, man, be my friend. And I'm like, I don't even know you. What's your name? Right? So I think the best way you get mentors is you just start to build a relationship with somebody. You don't ask them to be a mentor. You just build a relationship with someone and make yourself look so much like a sponge that this person feels like, wow, this person has some potential. Let me mold them. Next thing you know, this person becomes your mentor without you asking. Right? So it starts off with a coffee meeting or something that starts a conversation. And then, remember I said the relationships and information thing? As long as you're always pinging for information and understanding the value of relationships, then you'll be able to keep that person in your life. Think about how many times you've met somebody that could have been valuable for you. They gave you the business card. Did you reach out to them a week later? You probably didn't. You know what I mean? When you understand the value of that relationship, you probably will reach out. You'll stay in touch. I could have not hit Mark Suster back. I would have never gotten to Maker Studios. I would have never gotten to that EIR position. I understood the value of that. So I think that's where you start.
Absolutely. And just underscoring again that you've got to build those relationships before you need that person. So you don't want to be walking up to them saying, hey, will you be my mentor? Have you had coffee? Do you know anything about their business? All those things are a path of building a relationship before you can get a return on that.
Correct.
So you had a long, illustrious career in both music and now tech. Tell us about your new business. I'm very excited about it.
So when I first got into tech, I was just in an advisory capacity. I was advising, and then that led to me investing. But I always felt like I was an entrepreneur. I always felt like I was a founder. Like, if you think about my music career, I was a person that started this company, back in the days in my garage or something, and I watched it grow to this massive thing. You create this song called Riding Dirty for $4,000, and then one day you watch it grow to be this massive thing. I look at it almost like a company. I had a DJ and people that I had to hire and people that had to go on a road with me, and we ran it at the time, like a little bit ghetto. I wasn't as refined as I am now, but we was learning the entrepreneurial skills, you know what I mean? And then now, after all those years of doing that, that gave me a confidence that I could be a builder, that I could create something. And I always wanted to be in that create position. I wanted to go out and build something that I believe help conversations, because most people, when you ask them where they go to speak to somebody that they look up to, everybody says Twitter, and I feel like, when I ask you, who do you look up to? Who do you like? You say, oh, I like The Rock, Dwayne Johnson. I'm like, okay, have you spoken to Dwayne Johnson? And they'll say, Well, he retweeted my friend on Twitter one time. And I'm like, I feel like we're in an age where you can see all these influencers and people that you look up to on devices. You can see DJ Khaled getting lost on jet skis on Snapchat, right? But where can you talk to these people at, right? Where can you have face-to-face conversations with them? You might say, oh, well, maybe FaceTime. Well, FaceTime is something you do with your mother or something. You don't feel like it's a social thing that you can meet new people. And I think meeting new people and building new relationships is super important. So that is the problem that I wanted to solve. And I think about why social doesn't work for me. You know, I used to be very active on social, and I would post this thought on Twitter, and I want to have a conversation with the world about whatever's in my mind. And then some random kid out of nowhere comes back and says, F you, Kobe Bryant lover. And then I'm like, in real life, nobody comes up to me and says that. You know? Why do we allow this conversation to happen? That's not a productive conversation. So you know what? I'm just going to ignore this kid. I'm going to ignore him, right? And then the kid has power because his friends retweet him. And now he just gets power. And it incentivizes more people to do that. And now you got people like me that just post a status update and people are talking at it and they're not getting a chance to talk to me. So I felt like all that abusive stuff that happens and the trolling and all that anonymity, I feel like something needs to fix that. So that's what we're trying to solve with this app that we launched called Convos. That's Convos with a Z, C-O-N-V-O-Z. If you have an iPhone, I need you to make sure you download that before you leave. Can I get an amen?
Amen.
Okay, all right. But yeah, we got influencers on there, you know, Shaq and Snoop, and you know, our goal is going to be in the future. We want this to be the way you communicate with people, because I know people don't have a lot of time for apps on their phone. You got a lot of apps. You're like, oh no, another video app. But I believe that, you know, there's a few 4 or 5 apps that you use on your phone that are for specific reasons, and I think Snapchat is more of the reality show, where you go to see people show off their lives. You know, you got Dwayne Wade showing off his closet and his shoes. You can't really talk to him. We're trying to create that space that allows you to communicate with people that you look up to, but also people that have a common interest. Like, if you like the Lakers, why can't you find more other cool people that like the Lakers and have a conversation with them, you know? So that's what we're trying to do.
Well, Kim, thank you for coming out and sharing with us, and thank you for being part of the movement to bring innovation to South LA. I've been a longtime fan, and it's been great spending the afternoon with you.
Awesome. Great questions.